In the headlines for this hour on VTV News, Prime Minister attends Vietnam-U.S. Business Summit. In Vietnam, a bright spot in Sustainable Development Goal implementation. In inner war news, Israel and Hezbollah reach ceasefire agreement for Lebanon.
Broadcasting from Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. VTV News starts right now.
Hello, it's 3 p.m. local time in Hanoi, and you're watching VTV News. On Wednesday morning, Party General Secretary Tô Lâm met with the Standing Committee of Hanoi Party Committee. After reviewing the report on party building, political system development, socio-economic progress, and security matters of the city, General Secretary Tô Lâm noted that the Central Committee considers Hanoi a key model party committee. He expressed hope that the city would swiftly implement party resolutions, ensuring they reach every level from grassroots to individuals' party members. The General Secretary emphasized that beyond becoming a regional and national economic hub that drives growth in surrounding areas, Hanoi must also emerge as a center of innovation. He stressed that successful policy implemented in the capital should be quickly adopted and spread across the nation. On Wednesday morning, State President Lương Cường met with the Central Internal Affairs Commissions under the Standing Office of the Central Steering Committee for Judicial Reform to discuss key directions and tasks. After reviewing the work report and hearing opinions from Politburo members and relevant agencies, State President Lương Cường praised the commissions for completing the draft on schedule for the Politburo's consideration and promulgation. The State President directed agency to thoroughly prepare content for the Steering Committee's first meeting following its Politburo mandated reorganization, with emphasis on developing a key work program through the end of the term. On Wednesday morning, Prime Minister Phie attended the 2024 Vietnam-U.S. Business Summit. The United States is currently Vietnam's second largest trading partner and largest export market. In the first 10 months of the year, bilateral trade turnover reached nearly $111 billion, surpassing last year's record figure. In a videotaped speech, the U.S. Secretary of State emphasized that cooperation between businesses of the two countries is more vibrant and stronger than ever. At the conference, Prime Minister Phie shared a number of key points about the current global and regional situation, increasingly good Vietnam-U.S. relations, and Vietnam's achievements after nearly 40 years of renovation. Regarding development policy, the Prime Minister outlined Vietnam's focus on three main pillars, 6 key tasks, and 3 strategic breakthroughs. He noted that Vietnam is implementing major projects to transform the nation and usher in a new era of prosperity. The National Assembly held a plenary session Wednesday morning to discuss the amended draft employment law. More in the following story.
Deputies expressed support for passing the amended employment law while calling for clearer regulations on unemployment insurance eligibility and benefits, along with stronger employment support policies.
Given the aging population, we should encourage employment for elderly people who are still able to work. However, this group faces challenges due to age, health, and labor productivity. Therefore, the government should implement policies to support employers who hire women over 40 and elderly workers to encourage them to develop inclusive recruitment practices.
I agree with the policies outlined in the draft law. However, I recommend that the drafting committee consider adding provisions for pregnant women and those with children under 12 months old. This would create more job opportunities, improve gender equality, and protect the rights of female workers.
Deputies also suggested a legal framework to encourage informal labor sectors to register as businesses, as well as to enhance digital and soft skills among young people and support startups. However, concerns were raised about the labor registration procedures outlined in the draft law.
The provisions on labor registration are unclear. Who exactly is responsible for registering employment? Is it the Department of Labor, Invalids, and Social Affairs, or local authorities? If it's at the commune level, this would be very challenging for local authorities to handle effectively.
Earlier, with broad support from the majority, the National Assembly passed several pieces of legislation, including the law on people's air defense, the amended trade union law, and a resolution on investment policies for the National Program for Cultural Development for the 2025 to 2035 period.
Vietnam stands out as a bright spot in implementing sustainable development goals. According to the Ministry of Planning and Investment's assessment report on the National Action Plan 2030, Vietnam ranked 54th out of 166 countries this year. The country's Sustainable Development Index scored 73 points, higher than the global average, placing it second in Southeast Asia. Vietnam excelled particularly in goals related to poverty elimination, quality education, sustainable urban and rural development, effective responses to climate change and natural disasters. In 2024, the poverty rate has decreased by an additional 1%, now standing at 1.93%. This is a remarkable achievement in poverty reduction. However, continued efforts are crucial to address challenges and prevent the resurgence of poverty during economic hardships.
After receiving a cow through a poverty reduction program, Zhang's family has grown their herd to 2 animals. Through cattle sales and crop income, they have cleared their debts and now investing in further herd expansion.
The government has helped by providing land for planting acacia, which has allowed us to develop economic.
Tang's family has reinvested their cattle income into fruit trees. Their orchard now features 300 sweet pomelo trees, along with other fruit varieties, with an expected annual income of $3,300. Having escaped poverty, the family is steadily building financial security.
Since receiving the cows, they have developed very well. We only need to focus on expanding the herd.
Farming must be combined with technical knowledge to be successful. For poverty reduction programs, we always provide training on animal care and disease prevention before handing the livestock over to people.
Aside from financial support, creating sustainable livelihoods is essential. In Lac Son, after receiving assistance, many families have gone on to create jobs for themselves and those around them.
We provide livestock support such as cows and goats, but we also need to offer other forms of assistance like promoting labor exports or encouraging factories to invest in poor areas. Only then can people truly escape poverty.
At the beginning of 2024, nearly 30% of households in Lac Son were still classified as poor or near poor. By the end of 2022, the district expects about 22% of households to remain in poverty or just above the poverty line.
More than 17 million Vietnamese products are exported online, showing a 50% increase in value and 40% growth in trading partners. This data comes from the Department of E-commerce and Digital Economy under the Ministry of Industry and Trade. Overall, cross-border e-commerce has grown 26% this year. Amazon Global Selling Vietnam notes that these figures demonstrate Vietnamese businesses' great potential and ongoing efforts to expand into international market through digital platforms. However, small and medium-sized enterprises still face challenges due to limited digital knowledge and skills, low competitiveness, and insufficient understanding of market information, legal requirements, and tariffs. Standardizing raw material area is a top priority for the task of expanding agricultural exports. The Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development has implemented a pilot project of building 5 standardized agriculture and forestry raw materials areas, which spans nearly 170,000 hectares. After more than 2 years, it is now possible to clearly identify areas for cultivating coffee, rice, fruit, and forestry materials that meet international standards.
Sơn La province has become the second largest fruit growing area in Vietnam. The province's 82,000 hectares produce nearly 400,000 tons of fruits annually. Key crops such as mangoes, pomelos, and custard apples are cultivated following strict processes. In the past 2 years, farmers have specifically expanded custard apple cultivation areas.
The cooperative aims to transition towards organic farming. We've received many orders, but we cannot even meet domestic demand.
In My Son district, 200 cooperatives have been established, attracting 6 enterprises to invest in processing plants. 85% to 90% of fruit materials from the region now meet international standards.
Last October, we signed an agreement with the Provincial People's Committee, ensuring transparency in both standards and markets.
We've brought various stakeholders together. Our community-based agricultural extension system operates in raw material zones to connect farmers with processing plants.
In addition to standardizing agricultural products, infrastructure in raw material regions is also being improved. According to the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development, nearly 100 kilometers roads, 3 pumping stations, and 3 warehouse showroom complexes have been completed in the 5 pilot zones. The positive results from these standardized zones are spreading rapidly, driving more investment into the agricultural sector.
And before moving on to some other news, let's take a look at foreign exchange rate for today, November 27th. Coming up next on VTV News, rare black bear spotted in Guangxi. And century-old Ajurai village preserve cultural heritage of Central Highlands. The eastern wind disturbance has weakened, leaving the central region affected only by cold air. As a result, heavy rainfall has gradually decreased and river floods continue to recede rapidly. For Wednesday night, rainfall from Quảng Nam to Khánh Hòa is expected to be 20 to 50 millimeters generally, with some local areas receiving over 80 millimeters. The Hà Tĩnh, Đà Nẵng region will see less rainfall, ranging from 10 to 30 millimeters, with some area reaching over 60 millimeters. While rain has decreased, there remains a risk of localized landslide on mountain slopes. In Thừa Thiên Huế, river floods are receding rapidly. By Thursday morning, water levels in the Hương River and Bồ River are forecast to drop to around warning level 1. Flood levels, waters in low-lying areas along the rivers will continue to gradually recede. More than 1,000 kilometers of coastline in central Vietnam face severe erosion. Rising tides have caused extensive damage along the shores of Quảng Nam and Quảng Ngãi provinces. More to follow.
The coastline in Tuyết Diêm 1 village, Bình Sơn district, Quảng Ngãi province, has experienced severe erosion in just a few days. The shoreline has receded by more than 15 meters. Both the protective forest and numerous coastal structures have been engulfed by the rising tides.
Just yesterday, there was no erosion, but today the sea has receded dramatically. I hope the authorities will provide support to rebuild the coastline.
If the erosion continues, we will lose access to the road, not to mention the danger of houses collapsing.
The erosion now spans over 500 meters, posing a direct threat to the Zungquat border guard station. While the station has installed warning signs and deployed personnel to reinforce the area, these temporary measures have failed to withstand the powerful waves.
If we don't take permanent action to prevent erosion soon, the rising tides will completely wipe out the area's coastline in the near future.
A black bear weighing about 150 kilograms had just been discovered in the Guangxi forest area. This information was confirmed by the management board of Bắc Hương Hóa Natural Reserve, Guangxi Province, on a Tuesday afternoon. The image of the bear was taken by a digital camera trap placed in the reserve. Listed in the red data book, the reserve is taking measures to protect and preserve this rare animal. A rare turtle was released back into the ocean in the Lý Sơn Marine Reserve in the northern coastal province of Quảng Ngãi on Monday. The turtle, which has yet to reach maturity, weighed approximately 3 kilograms and was deemed healthy before its release. It was discovered by a local fisherman floating among debris on Lý Sơn Beach. The fisherman reported to Phie, the Lý Sơn Marine Reserve Management Board. This species is listed in both the Red Book and Red List as a rare and endangered, highlighting the importance of its survival. Mountainous provinces in Vietnam are home to many ethnic groups. After recognizing the economic burden and waste caused by outdated practices, many local authorities have implemented policies to address these issues. Let's explore how Hà Giang Province's efforts to eliminate outdated customs are improving residents' quality of life.
After his grandfather's death, this man faced an important decision. Local tradition called for weeks-long funeral ceremonies with extensive livestock slaughter for feasts. Instead, breaking from outdated practices, he opted for a simpler, modern funeral service. This choice saved his family thousands of dollars.
We held a small ceremony and then promptly organized the burial. I see this as a convenient and modern practice.
This man organized his son's wedding according to modern customs. By hosting a single reception with only a few dozen banquet tables, his family saved up to over $10,000.
What's worth keeping should be preserved, and what's unnecessary should be discarded. This approach saves us a lot of time.
If we can eliminate outdated customs, we will undoubtedly enhance cultural and spiritual life, and from there, reduce poverty. Outdated practices make it extremely difficult to escape poverty.
Outdated customs and practices have severely impacted the regional economy, trapping many households in cycles of poverty and debt. Families often borrow money and resources to cover ceremonial costs, leading to severe financial hardship. The effort to abolish these customs and promote modern, practical lifestyles among ethnic communities fights wastefulness and creates opportunities for a more prosperous future.
In the Central Highlands provinces, ethnic groups preserve their traditional cultural values through cultural heritage preservation and community-based tourism. Many century-old villages have successfully adopted this approach, attracting visitors with festivals, rich folklore traditions, and unique folk songs. More to follow.
This village is home to over 200 households. Its traditional values are thriving amidst the bustle of modern life. Villagers remain united in preserving the precious heritage of their ancestors. The resonant sounds of the gongs are heard regularly, sustained by the Jarai people's passion for traditional culture.
We are delighted to teach people about gong playing and shuang dancing.
Jarai province has focused on investing in infrastructure and comprehensive transportation. These efforts aim to preserve century-old villages and establish cultural tourism villages. Villagers are deeply aware of the importance of preserving the unique culture of the Zarai people.
We use culture as our foundation, particularly the community traditions of Zalai ethnic groups and Gong culture. By transforming cultural resources into economic opportunities, we can encourage people to preserve and promote cultural values.
The Zarai community is banding together to teach younger generations how to preserve and promote their cultural heritage through tourism and immersive experiences. They hope to ensure the longevity of this rich, century-old village in the Zarai Highlands.
Coming up next in our One News, Israel and Hezbollah reached a ceasefire agreement for Lebanon. And U.S. presidential transition agreement signed. A potential end to the conflict between Israel and Hezbollah is beginning to take shape. A ceasefire between Israel and the Hezbollah in Lebanon came into effect at 4 a.m. local time on Wednesday, about 9 a.m. Vietnam time, following an agreement brokered by the United States and France. Under the agreement, Hezbollah is required to withdraw its forces at least 30 kilometers from the Lebanese borders with Israel. Meanwhile, the Israeli military must pull out of southern Lebanon within 60 days. A buffer zone will be established between the two sides, and the Lebanese government military forces will be deployed to ensure neither party crosses the defined boundaries. A monitoring committee comprising 5 nations, led by the United States, will oversee the implementation of the agreement. Canada and Mexico have expressed their concerns and threatened retaliation following U.S. President-elect Donald Trump's announcement of plans to impose a 25% tariff on imports from these two countries. Donald Trump cited concern over illegal immigration and drug trafficking as justifications for this policy. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau attended a parliamentary session on Tuesday to discuss specific measures to counter the tariff threat and protect Canadian jobs. The Canadian Prime Minister stated that he had already engaged in discussions with the U.S. President-elect regarding the issue. Meanwhile, Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum declared that if the U.S. enforces a 25% tariff on all Mexican imports, Mexico will respond with an equivalent tariff on U.S. goods. In the first 9 months of this year, bilateral trade between the U.S. and Mexico amounted to $632 billion, accounting for 15.9% of the total global trade of the world's largest economy. President-elect Donald Trump's team has signed an agreement with the White House unlocking key transition briefing and activities after a lengthy delay that stemmed in part from the Donald Trump team's concern over a mandatory ethics agreement. The president-elect transition officials could soon have access to agencies across the federal government, allowing the president-elect team to meet with outgoing officials and receive briefings on department's activities. His team has previously opposed certain aspects of the power transition agreement and declined the Biden administration request to promptly sign the memorandum. President-elect Donald Trump will take office on January 20th, 2025.
Who was very badly injured, who was in the operating room.
The people of a Kenyan small coastal village used to earn their living mainly growing cassava and maize until the ravages of drought forced them to try a new crop, seaweed. Seaweed farming was first introduced in Kenya in 2008 and has expanded rapidly to cover many regions in the country. More in the following story.
Along the coast in the village of Kibuyuni, investments in seaweed farming have led to improvements in infrastructure and electricity. The firm employs more than 100 households. Tima Jasho, a mother of 7 in Kibuyuni, said she was now able to pay her children's school fees and move her family from a mud home to a brick house.
Seaweed farming has contributed a lot to pay for my children's fees. Even when my husband gives me money, I already have my own money from growing seaweed. I just add it to pay for the children's school.
Locals plant seaweed on the beachfront and lay it out to dry inland, joining scores of other communities feeding a growing demand at home and abroad for associated products including soap, shampoo, and seaweed powder, used in food. Higher temperatures, rising sea levels and poor rains have all played their part in the shift.
There are challenges that we can't control, like climate change. There are times when the sun is hot, there's no seaweed. You have to go back. And there are times there's a lot of rain, and the seaweeds are many, causing a challenge when drying.
Along the coast of Kenya, most of the fishing is actually undertaken by men. So what it means is that as the men go fishing, the women and the youth don't have a place in fishing, so they remain at home. So the seaweed interventions came in to support the women to be able to have a livelihood.
The global market for seaweed has tripled in size in the last 2 decades, according to a 2024 United Nations report, growing from $5 billion in 2000 to $17 billion in 2021 USD. Seaweed is Tanzania's third largest export and employs over 26,000 farmers. Kenya still has a long way to go before it becomes a global industry leader like its neighbor.
And now, as usual, let's continue with the weather forecast. And that's it for the news for today. To rewatch a program, you can log on to VTVgo.vn or download a mobile application VTVgo. Thanks for watching and goodbye for now.